Where did we stop? That was almost a month I was here. Anybody remembers anything? I doubt, but let's see, huh? Anything?
At verse 98.
But what were the points? What did we discuss?
We discussed the characteristics of a pure devotee.
Yeah.
Characteristics of pure devotee, okay. Anything else? Any particular points?
Yes, choosing a devotee and having a tilak is not the
Really?
main characteristic, but it should be
I was talking about that?
vinamra.
Maybe, I don't know. Sounds strange. But okay, here comes our book. Okay, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanajnanashvaka Chakshunamritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Gopala Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharini Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Okay, I can see quite a number of you might have been here from some recent programs, or just maybe anybody here for the first time? Okay, well, it's going to be a little bit tough, then I'll have to simplify, keep things very simple, because what we're discussing right now, this is a book called Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a postgraduate study of spiritual life. So that means it's going to be deep, it's going to be high, it's going to be very philosophical. And it's going to be a struggle for me, therefore, to keep it somewhat, I'll try my best, intelligible. So let's try, we'll see. Let me see, previously, what Advaita Charya appeared, devotional service, gross material favors, okay, fine. Everyone was engaged in material enjoyment, whether sinfully or virtuously. No one was interested in transcendental service of the Lord, who can give total relief from repetition of birth and death. So last time what was discussed was the worship of Advaita Charya. Advaita Charya is one of the expansions of the Supreme Lord, but he appeared again as with a particular function, with a particular role of someone who is very high in a hierarchical material level. He was a very prominent Brahmana, so to say, very recognized, very respectful. And at his time, of course, from the spiritual point of view, he is expansion of Mahavishnu and Sadashiva. This is something we discuss. In the meantime, if I say something, you can note down. If something is not clear, you can ask me later on. Because if I go into details of explaining each and every point that I mention now, then we're going to get lost into so many other discussions. So if something is not clear, or you feel it necessary to be explained, then I can try to do it immediately. You can raise your hand. Otherwise, if you can note it down, and then maybe I'll keep some time, keep the class shorter, so we can discuss it later on. So Advaita Charya, he is, as many devotees of the Lord, of course, he is the Lord himself also simultaneously. He appeared before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. And wherever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or whenever Krishna appears, Paritranaya Sadhana Vinasha Chidushkitan Dharma Samstapanata Sambhavami Yuge Yuge. that means that everything is already set. It just doesn't come to some kind of unprepared place, uninvited, suddenly. Of course, you can do all of this, but everything becomes ready, everything becomes pretty much set. So then Krishna appears in various forms for various reasons for which he has been invited or called, or he has to interfere and react. So therefore also here we see that many of his great devotees have appeared earlier to set the scene, so to say. Like the play goes on or whatever, the scene is set and everything is ready. So then the main actors appear and then the play starts. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also appeared in this matter, being called upon by Advaitacharya. And now here the reason is given. Why did Advaitacharya call Supreme Personality of Godhead to come? Why did this happen? And I just want to explain a little bit more, but so we can appreciate this Chaitanya Charitamrita, this book. This is the book which discusses different kinds of dealings amongst those who practice spiritual life in relationship to God. Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary book. Bhagavad Gita is like foundation of spiritual life. Bhagavad Gita makes us understand who is God and what is material energy, what is time, what to do what is work, what are different types of activities, what is our relationship with God, and ultimately tries to bring us to the point of surrendering towards Krishna or following Krishna's instructions. And then what follows, it's higher, that is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam then is teaching us practically what happens when you surrender and when you don't surrender to Krishna. That's much greater than just Bhagavad Gita. That means it goes much deeper. It explains much more. It becomes more clear what is going on. And then Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's even more intimate, it's even more sweeter, it's even more clear, describing that what do devotees do, that means those who follow on the path of spiritual life, how do they interact amongst themselves in terms of serving Krishna. So that's even more intimate. So this is what this discussion is all about. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we said earlier, he himself appeared as a devotee to teach us how to be a devotee, because even that we don't know. We don't know anything practically. We have to learn so many things in life. Anyway, and pretty much we can notice that there's hardly any culture. Like when Srila Prabhupada came to the West, he had to teach devotees, how to eat, how to sleep, how to practically do everything. We don't even know this nowadays. And I'm noticing here in India, hardly anybody knows any of the culture. But what it means, culture. Culture also means something that is in relationship to health, our well-being. Do we know how to eat? I doubt. Pretty much no. Do we know how to sleep? We don't even know how to sleep. We may think, this is something that just doesn't matter. You drop dead, drop tired, unconscious, and that's it. That's sleeping. No, that's not sleeping. Or any time, or at any place, or whatever. No, that's not sleeping. Or at any, like for example, some days back we were discussing position of your head when you're sleeping. How different magnetic fields from different directions, influence us. Subtly or grossly, whatever. There's so many considerations. That's all part of the culture. So we don't know any of those. And then how can we practice spiritual life? It becomes more difficult. So therefore we have to be taught. Unfortunately, like I say, nowadays even just some basic culture. What to speak of different dealings, what to speak of different interactions, what to speak of understanding anyone's position even in the first place. These are all just complete mysteries practically for us. And of course, we know something else. We know things in a completely wrong way, and therefore we think we know everything. We have a completely wrong perception about everything, and therefore we speculate. Speculation is in the realm of gambling. And that's something that's prohibited in spiritual life, because it really puts us in a very, very, very awkward and negative position. if we start speculating, and that doesn't lead anywhere, it doesn't lead to any practical conclusion, and it even can further mislead us into so many wrong directions. So speculation is absolutely discouraged. There has to be appropriate, very clear guidance, and that's what spiritual life is about. Because we love to speculate. I love to speculate. I just heard, there was one story told by Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. He tells a story. I'll tell a little story. Okay. There was one magistrate. There was one magistrate in Bengal. And that time, pretty much British had their own circle of association. They were like mostly associating with themselves. And of course, they would have some Bengali servants or whatever, but they were pretty much retaining their so-called British culture. And then one day, servant was talking about some different fruits, and then he mentioned jackfruit. I say katal here in Panas, in Marathi, whatever. So he mentioned, and then that magistrate, he was kind of curious, okay, what is that fruit? What is it? And then the servant said, okay, I will arrange for it. And then because he had different court cases, this and that, he was busy. And then once he was finished, when he came back to kitchen, dining room, whatever, he found the jackfruit half open and the knife placed beside. And that was kind of a lunchtime, so he had some time. And then he tried to take some of this jackfruit, and he didn't notice. He saw jackfruit for the first time, of course. I don't know if you. I remember my first experience with the jackfruit. That was in Tamil Nadu. And it was like, what, 98 or something. We went there traveling in a bus. That's the first time I tasted jackfruit, and it was amazing. Anyway, that's a different thing now. But so then this magistrate, so he got the knife and started cutting, but as you know, it becomes very sticky. The more sweeter it is, it's just incredibly sticky. And then he also didn't know much how to separate these, and he just kind of messed up pretty much. So difficult. And then when he was eating also, there were all these little parts, sticky parts and things around. And of course, he just become, all this white sticky substance enter into his beard and hair, because he was, he was trying things in a different way, and somehow he was touching around, and then, okay, he was tasting jackfruit, and that was nice. But then when he realized that this sticky substance was there, like a glue, like some kind of a rubber, and then he couldn't wash it. He was using water and so many different things, and he was trying to pull it out, and it wasn't going. It didn't happen. And then he started almost practically panicking because his lunchtime was over and he was supposed to go back to the courtroom. And in such a state, when he saw himself in the mirror, that would seem impossible. That would be a disaster, of course, out of question. So then what to do then? He was like becoming very, very restless, and then fortunately servant was around, and he called and quickly inquired from him that, please tell me, now give me some advice, what am I supposed to do? And the servant said, there's nothing that can be done. Once this, enters into hair or beard or something, whatever, the only option is you have to shave it. The only option now you have to shave it. So then he agreed, and then, of course, he didn't have any other option, so he shaved immediately. He shaved the beard, he shaved the hair. And then hardly anyone recognized him once he entered the courtroom. People were like very surprised, and what is going on? What is this? But he didn't disclose the reason for his shaving. He never told. He said, and servant also told him, don't tell to anybody there, because actually it's pretty shameful thing. Everybody would laugh. It's like kind of it's like it's nothing to share with anyone else. So then he was just in that kind of state. And then what was interesting, there was another case that he was presiding over, and that was case of one Brahmin Bhattacharya, and his father died sometimes back, and then of course he shaved his head. There used to be a cultural tradition, and so as a sign of morning, and like so he shaved his head. But there was that court case, and then when he entered the courtroom, and then this magistrate, when he saw him, he started laughing. And then, and then the lawyer of this Bhattacharya said, "Oh, now you're really in trouble. It means now your case really is going to get." That's another good sign. And this Bhattacharya started shaking, and then the magistrate started laughing even more. He said, "Don't worry." And he said, then he called him on the side. He said, "Come here." He said, I know I shaved." He said, "I know what happened to you." He said, "Same thing happened to me." So anyway, so somehow he convinced him, and then he was Bhattacharya was relieved anyway, whatever. But this is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. He gives this example. He said, "How people speculate." They have no idea what had happened, what is going on, what something means. They just really speculate. And of course, there is a saying in Sanskrit, Atmano Manyate Jagat, that we perceive the world, and therefore the way we perceive it, we think everybody else perceives it in the same way. Everybody else perceives it in the same way. So it's absolute speculation. If it's not based on Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, if it's not based on, of course, some direct inquiry as well, then how can we ascertain what the real facts are? It's very difficult. So that's why we have the scriptures. Of course, that reminds me, there was another comment. There was one devotee. Actually, he had a direct experience that was in the West. There was another interesting case with the jackfruit seeds. Jackfruit seeds are very tasty when they're roasted, no? Even they can be boiled. Very nice. So then there was one officer also. He was presented with the jackfruit seeds, and then they were boiled in the water. So he didn't have any idea what to do. So what happened? He drank the water and threw the seeds. So that's speculation. That's really when people don't know what is the essence and what is to be done. Yeah. So that's why we have to learn. We have to receive the knowledge. Even about they can have somebody can have in this life very high position. Like we know people can attain some high position, respectable position, some kind of celebrial, so to say, position, whatever it might be. But they might not know the basic. In the West there is an expression. There are people who are called nerds, they're very intelligent, whatever. They can't get some basic things together at all. Yeah. Of course, there may be so many different examples, but we won't get into this, not necessary. But so somebody can be in very high position, but something that it's so very basic, like I said, just we mentioned eating, sleeping, or whatever else it might be. We have no idea. Then what to speak of some other things, what to speak of spiritual life. We may have some knowledge, we may have some understanding in some other fields and aspects of life, but some other may be complete mystery for us. And then even whatever little we know, we may think, oh, that's good enough, that's sufficient. But that's absolutely not the case. Neither ever will be. Neither everyone will always be capable of understanding the different ways of certain cultural lifestyle. We can't also expect that either from everyone. But at least something basic, because that's what Srila Prabhupada explained. Because once one knows the culture, what is interesting, Srila Prabhupada said that the devotee is daksha. Daksha means expert. But at least, he might be expert in various things, but at least he might not be expert absolutely in everything, but at least he will know something of whatever field or whatever it's required to be known. At least something he will have some idea about. That's why, see, this is what happens when one practices spiritual life. Krishna just empowers someone, Krishna guides someone, Krishna inspires someone. And this is how Srila Prabhupada also, he could relate to greatest politicians, he could relate to scientists, he could relate to theologians, he could relate to any people from any kind of field and sphere of life. It's interesting because how can one do this? Again, devotee can do this because he knows the essence. That's very interesting. Devotee knows the essence, and therefore he can relate to everyone on those essential platforms. And people will be always very surprised. I mean, I know I heard from senior devotees who interact with various kinds of people of very, very successful. I mean, they have very successful profile in certain, again, spheres of life. And people are amazed that they're just like, wow, how come devotees have, where does that knowledge come from? Where is that information coming from? How do they know? How they can understand, let's say, certain aspects of their field which they're not apparently qualified as they are academically or in whichever other way. So how do devotees know this? Well, devotees know because they have the essence of everything. They have the culture, they have information which is given in the scriptures, which is not given practically anywhere else. And by having such a broad understanding, they can fit everything within it. That's a very powerful blessing of the Vedic scriptures, that it can accommodate so many various kinds of other philosophies, fits them in a certain way, and one can really immediately understand what it means, what it relates, how it can or it cannot be utilized, what are its benefits, what are its flaws. That's amazing thing that one can gain by practicing spiritual life and following these Vedic scriptures. This is incredible knowledge. That's why it is the essence of the Vedic scriptures. So this is what it's gained, and therefore we learn so many things. We learn incredibly many things, but again, we pointed out culture is very essential because it's foundational also. If we don't have culture, when we also try to practice spiritual life, that's going to be difficult. That's not going to be easy then. We will commit many offenses in the course of practice of spiritual life, and then it's going to be very, very slow progress. There will be progress, but it will be very slow progress. So if we have good foundation, then anything we build on top of that, it will be stable. But if foundation is not strong, then it's not going to be so easy, neither it will be so effective building up anything else upon it. So that's why Srila Prabhupada taught devotees, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, as we said, he came to teach us how to be a devotees also. Because that's not easy. Nothing is just learned from a textbook. We all require some kind of teacher. We all require some kind of mentor, facilitator. We all require somebody to guide us. It helps. It enormously helps. Because if we're going to be experimenting and speculating like this, maybe it's like this, maybe it's like that, then we end up with, without seeds, we end up with boiled water or whatever else example could be given. So that's something that is not practical at all. So for that reason, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. And what is interesting, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, he had his teachers. That's very important to understand. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he has somebody else to guide him and to teach him as well. And who was that? That was Swarup Damodar, who was his very close, personal, direct secretary. And it was, of course, maybe you might not be familiar with names, but anyway, we'll mention them. We'll just describe the principle behind it. He had Gadadhar Pandit, who is none other than expansion of Srimati Radharani, and of course Swarup Damodar is expansion of Lalita Devi. So, but why did Krishna assume that role that he's guided and taught by them? He is their source, we may say. He's the source of all the Shakti Tattvas. He's source even of Srimati Radharani. Of course, you can't separate sun from the sun rays. They're eternally one, so to say again. He's source, but still he's kind of source of them. But then how come he can be placed in a position where it said that he doesn't know what means bhakti, devotional service, or being a servant of Krishna? Because he assumed his role to taste what the devotees are tasting, to relish what the devotees are relishing. Because when he saw Srimati Radharani being more happier than he is, then he started wondering, how is this possible? How is this possible that somebody who serves me becomes more enthusiastic, more blissful, more happier like this? So he wanted to enter into mystery of that. And you may ask, how come Krishna or God doesn't know something? Well, he knows. He knows, but there is a difference between tattva and there is a difference between rasa. Rasa means taste, mellow, experience. Tattva means it's just some logic and reason, which, somebody can supply us with information how something, what did anyone taste last time who wants to share what was very tasty? I don't know why I'm looking at you, but I'm looking at you. Well, say something. Coconut sweet. Okay, coconut sweet. Coconut sweet. So we may understand what is coconut sweet. What is the color of coconut sweet? What how much sugar it has, or what are all these different molecules of it inside, or I don't know, different kinds of ingredients, different kinds of chemical combinations, whatever else. One can analyze what is like what they write on the label, so many calories, salts, this, that, energy, whatever, One can understand this, but unless you taste it, how will you understand what's the taste, no? So then what's superior, that intellectual pleasure of understanding something on that level, or when you taste something and you relish the taste? What is better? It's obvious. Taste is far better. So that's why Krishna understands everything, but he also wants to taste it. He wants to understand by tasting it. So that's why he assumes the role of Srimati Radharani. That's why he is God, but he also wants to be servant of himself practically. He wants to become servant of God. So that's why he assumes his role of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then he's guided in that role, because who knows, or who can know better than the gopis know how to serve Krishna? Nobody knows that. So therefore he kind of subserves himself, puts himself in that position to be guided by Srimati Radharani, be guided by Sri Lalita. And others also, Ramananda Rais, Vishakha, and so many others appear in this pastime in those kind of roles. And then he serves, then he performs devotional service, and then he's also through that teaching us how do we become devotees, because he's exemplifying that position of the devotee himself. So that's why Krishna comes to teach us. We don't even know that. We don't even know how to be devotional or anything else. So we have to be taught how to be a devotee, how to be devoted to Krishna. And he's relishing that more than being Krishna himself. He's far more happier serving also his devotees rather than being served. He's relishing that also much more. Like Srila Prabhupada, I just read one statement that was some time back. Thank you. There was, Srila Prabhupada made a statement that what is better one second, I'll just try to, I'm paraphrasing, I'll just try to get it as correct as possible. I don't want to miss it because it's very important. Is it better to like kind of course it's important, it's a wonderful position when we serve God. But it's even more wonderful position when the God serves his devotees. And this is something that we can't understand it. How come Krishna can serve his devotees? How can Krishna becomes so surrendered? Krishna becomes completely sold out, subservient to his devotees. We can't imagine that position. Because Krishna serves his father, Nanda Baba. Krishna serves his mother, Mother Yashoda. Krishna serves his devotees. So what kind of position? We can't even imagine that kind of position is possible. That Krishna would place so much trust in someone who loves him so much that he would completely surrender to them. So that's the position of bhakti. That's not a cheap position at all. Can we imagine somebody who is the controller, master of the entire creation, we won't even mention universes or whatever, because of love and trust that he feels in someone, he completely surrenders to someone like this? I can't even imagine that. But Krishna does that. Krishna does that. So that kind of position, this is incredibly unique position. So Krishna is acting like this. He's completely sold out, surrendered to his devotees. But that means devotional service. Complete, again, surrender to Krishna. Because devotees would never even think of anything, or Mother Yashoda, for example, of course, like any mother, most of you, how could you ever think that, that there is something that could harm or displease Krishna in any way? So all they think is Krishna, and all that Krishna thinks is about his devotees. That's devotion. That's spiritual life. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also comes. He wants to taste this, and he wants to give this to us absolutely without any considering our any kind of qualification. So that's something that's even more amazing. That's something that's absolutely inconceivable practically. How can somebody receive the most greatest, the most wonderful gift, something the most treasurable, without being even qualified for this? But Krishna is giving this for free. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is distributing this for free. He's not asking for anything. No. He's not even, because like we see, Bhagavad Gita, what is Krishna saying at the end? You have to surrender. You want to know something about me, you want to achieve all the whatever, you have to surrender. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes and says, you don't even have to surrender. You don't have to surrender. You just chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. That's it. You don't even have to surrender. You just chant, you'll benefit. You just chant, you do whatever you want, nonsense you want to do, it doesn't matter whatever. But at least you just start chanting. It doesn't matter. So he's just so. That's why he's known as Namo Mahavakanyaya, the most magnificent incarnation of Krishna. He just freely distributes whatever is the most valuable. And because this is the most valuable, of course, like Prabhupada would said, not everyone will be interested because they won't know the value of it. They might think it's just something worthless. Even to that extent. And or from another point of view, it might be so worthy that because people don't have any spiritual capacity, then they might not be interested in that sense either. Like somebody, let's say, Prabhupada will give example, like how many people enter into the jewelry shop? Not many, not too many. They're not either interested or they're not qualified in a sense of purchasing. But again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distributes this freely. And now, whether somebody wants or doesn't, they will still benefit. Because what it means when we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, even those who are antagonistic, opposing, inimical, whatever, even when devotees chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, they will hear it also. So even if they don't want, they'll benefit from it. Still they will benefit. This is the mercy, this is real amazing potency of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and of course, blessing of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that everybody in this age will benefit from this sound vibration. And we know this sound vibration, whatever worse could have happened on this planet, because of this sound vibration, things are still not as bad as they could be, as it's described in this age of Kali, what could be going on. Of course, many bad things are going on, but many worse things could have already happened and still will happen. But it's amazing, by the devotees' activities, by this particular knowledge, atmosphere is becoming purified, at least to the extent that that's possible by devotees' activities. So this is the potency of course, that's another subject that can be discussed in detail some other time. How does that work? How does that function? How it relieves? I mean, we can say on our personal examples that how chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra relieves us from so many sinful propensities. That's just direct, immediate perception one can immediately have. So we say, okay, what's the proof? What's the result? Well, that's the first and immediate one. Yeah, that one can testify for himself. So that is that incredible mercy that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us. And what to speak, there's so many benefits of chanting Mahamantra, but then what to speak of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu really wanted to give us. And what that is love of Krishna. How to control Krishna, how to purchase Krishna. And that's not cheap, because Krishna is not fooled, and he's not going to be fooled. You can't cheat Krishna. It said in Bhagavad Gita, of the cheaters, I'm a cheat. We can't bluff or cheat him. So that's why one really has to have devotion, because he's not going to be making himself easily available to anyone and everyone. He's not going to surrender. He's not going to disclose his most intimate, whatever, qualities, thoughts, pastimes to someone who's not qualified. Because like we know, we don't do that with anybody else in this world, right? Because people will misuse it even, make things worse. So why would Krishna do that? So that's why one has to qualify. One has to prove that he is surrendered to Krishna, that one really wants Krishna. So that's what's bhakti. And that's the most valuable thing, because when you have Krishna, what do you have? You have everything. You have everything. What else can what else can be left to aspire for when we have Krishna, who is the source of everything? And of course, devotee then even it's not interested in everything, he's interested in Krishna. That's the most wonderful thing. That's the most personal thing. So this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach us. And therefore Advaita Acharya, he was seeing what is going on in this world. He said that the Dharma practically didn't exist anymore. There was no real Dharma. And we know whenever, like sometimes somebody may wonder, if you open Bhagavad Gita, you'll see the disciplic succession, right? Srila Prabhupada is 32nd in the line. So you may wonder, how is this? If this is from the beginning of universe, if this connection goes from the beginning of the universe, how come there are only 32 persons mentioned? No, 32 persons. I mean, what is this? You can trace it back for a few hundred years, no? But we talk that this disciplic succession goes from the beginning of universe, starting with Krishna. So how come only 32? Anybody knows the answer? How come only 32? Do you ever ask yourself that question when you're reading Bhagavad Gita and came across that page where all these different acharyas are mentioned? How come only 32? Okay, I'll give you a moment to think about it. You people behind hiding, nobody knows? You know? You know? Okay. This fellow next to you? It's hiding. Horrible. Okay, Parikshit, enlighten us.
From what I read, the disciplic succession was lost, and thus, when Lord came in the Dwapar Yuga, he re-established the connection, starting with the day he spoke the Gita.
Okay, but still there was gap even after that. What about that?
That was before Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came.
Yeah, nothing. Okay, but okay, you're good. That's good. That's fine. Yeah, the cyclic succession. Krishna says, "Yadai dahi dharma," is one of the famous verses. Glanir Bharata Adbhuta madharmasya tadatmana srijami aham. And it's like, yes, whenever the dharma is lost, Krishna comes to reestablish, or he sends someone to reestablish. Yes, so the cyclic succession, the teachings are lost. The real purpose and essence of dharma becomes lost due to influence of time. That is there. But then you may say, how come there is gap from Vyasadeva to Madhvacharya? There's no Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentioned here. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came after. Was Madhvacharya before. Madhva line. Why are you laughing? It's not funny. It's not. So So the point is that Madhvacharya, anyway, it is described, Madhvacharya directly received instructions from Vedavyasa on different platforms. It was the Badrinath, which is not accessible to us. It's much more subtle, higher platform that he did have access to, and he received direct knowledge from Vyasadeva. So therefore, the line doesn't extend as it could have been extending, but it's kind of shortened at this particular point. So sometimes from the other acharyas, the knowledge can be gained, and then certain sampradaya or teaching can be continued. So that's one of the bigger gaps that it's filled in such a particular way. And then the line continues regularly, Guru disciple till Srila Prabhupada. So that's why during the Advaita Acharya's time, you see that there were so many yagyas going on, so many chants were going on, so many different kinds of ritual going on. But he says here, everyone was engaging in material enjoyment. What does that mean? That they were using, this is mostly what is the case of, that's a big topic now, and we didn't start in our verse today, but anyway. That is mostly what goes on nowadays in the name of religion. It's just termed by Vyasadeva, he says that's Kaitava Dharma. What does that mean, Kaitava Dharma? Kaitava Dharma means cheating Dharma. That means it's not Dharma, it's cheating religion. But what means cheating religion? I use religion for my, material benefits. I don't really use religion what it's supposed to be meant for, what it's really supposed to be used. And that's what? To develop devotion, to develop bhakti, to develop relationship with God. I use it for material facilities. I use it for my some kind of comfort, influence, prestige, control over others. That's why I use religion. So that's why I said that's not religion. That's not religion. That's a cheating process. Because it really cheats us from our real benefit that one can derive by practicing the essential points of the religion. So that's why he said, and that's what people were interested at that time. Navadvip was the seat of learning. Like if you can think nowadays of so many big universities, places of where big universities are present. So that's what Navadvip was at that time in India. So many big scholars came to learn grammar, nyaya, this, that, so many different subjects, Vedic scriptures. They were studying Shastras, but for what? For increasing their false prestige and for understanding how do we, benefit from that on the material platform. And that's why Advaita Acharya was horrified. All the devotees were horrified. I said the Dharma is lost, the essence is lost, spiritual life is lost. And then he said, of course, that they were using also material, the same scriptures, either sinfully or like this, virtuously. So that's both vikarma and karma. So both are bad. If there is no akarma, that means activity connected to the Lord and for His pleasure, there's no dharma, there's no spiritual life. And that's why he was alarmed and seeing that situation in the society, said this is complete disaster practically that is going on. He said only Lord can rectify this. Nobody else can rectify this position. And therefore he called upon Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to appear. And he said for what reason? So that he can give total relief from the repetition of birth. And that's the real relief. That's the real gain that one can achieve from the material platform, of course, but even more than that, really reestablish our relationship with Krishna. So that's why he engaged in such kind of invocation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, our time is pretty much up, so we'll just read. Or before we read, any questions so far about what we spoke? Anything anybody wants to ask? Any comments? Yes. Why? Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Krishna, he wants to understand her bhav, her mood, her that love for Krishna. So unless he guides, how can that be possible? So she has to explain, this is what you do, this is how you be supposed to behave, this is what you're supposed to feel. And in the case if you don't, then this is how you adjust that, this. So directly she was guiding then Krishna in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's right. And of course, definitely, how can Krishna appear without Srimati Radharani anywhere? She has to be there, no? Okay? Yeah.
But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is expansion of Radharani and Krishna.
No. He's in the mood of Radharani. He is Krishna in. What happens to your face? What kind of color it assumes? Red mostly, or something like this, So that mood, so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in the mood of Radharani, it becomes golden. That's her color. So he's in the mood, but he is Krishna. He's not Radharani. Just in her mood. Yes.
Can't you consider Buddha and Sankara in that context?
No.
Maybe for different reason, but
No. No other reason. They don't fit. Buddha and Shankara don't fit in disciplic succession.
Buddha is considered one of the Dasavatara.
Yeah, but he's not in Guru Parampara. He rejected the Vedas. And Shankara is preaching completely different thing, impersonal Mayavad philosophy. So it's not the same parampara. He comes in parampara, but it's not Vaishnava parampara. It's a different parampara. Buddha doesn't have parampara. He comes to reject the Vedas. Of course, he had to do that. There was a time, there's a reason. But he's not in that parampara. So they have different purpose. Buddha himself is Krishna, original Buddha, his expansion of Krishna. But he teaches atheism. How is that? I'll tell you after the class. But nothing to do with parampara. Anything else? Was there anything that was unclear what we spoke? Okay, then we'll read the verse we are supposed to discuss today. Okay. Lokagati dehi acharya karuna hridaya vicharakarena lokera kaiche hitahaya. Bengali, by the way. It's written in Bengali. Seeing the activity. Okay, this translation. Phew, purport. It's one page. Okay, we won't read the purport. We'll read translation. We'll discuss purport next time. Okay, seeing the activities of the world, the Acharya felt compassion and began to ponder how he could act for the people's benefit. Okay, so that's it. Today.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Oh, no.
I have one question.
Yes, please. 5 minutes.
Sometime given teachings of great Acharya, like 200 year back, 100 year back, but time, place, and situation change. So how we can understand that their information is 100% right according to current situation? So how to relate that?
How to understand? We understand that if there is no any current Acharya, that means that teaching is 100% relevant. That's how we can understand. Acharyas only appear when there is a need of certain correction according to time, place, and circumstances. So if there is no any Acharya, like Srila Prabhupada said, practically there's not going to be any founder, other new Acharya for the next 10,000 years. That's a pretty long period. So then there wouldn't be any need of really correcting and adjusting too many things. No? There will be Acharyas, but not the founder Acharyas. So therefore there is no requirement, or hopefully there won't be any additional requirement for adjusting and changing certain things or whatever. Of course, we don't change. The principles can never be changed, but the details could be adjusted. So therefore, there is no need. So whatever previous acharyas has said, that's what the principle is. We understand previous acharyas through the teachings of the current or present acharya, or the most recent one. We can't jump. If we do that, then we actually commit an offense, and we can also completely misunderstand what the previous acharyas have been teaching. So it is encouraged that we learn and know what the previous acharyas had been teaching, but we have to understand this through the teachings of the recent acharya. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay. Okay, so then we'll stop. Charitamrita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanand.
Thank you.